Coldwater, Nevada was never on most maps. A mining town built in the early 1900s, abandoned before the 80s, and left to the desert wind long before GPS existed. But for Officer Daniel Mercer, it was still on the books. A jurisdictional ghost he was technically responsible for. His precinct covered over 100 miles of desert highway, and Coldwater sat right at the edge, a cluster of sun-bleached ruins, a collapsed water tower, and what locals called the last house. Daniel had only been out there once years ago when he was still new. He remembered the silence, how it swallowed everything. No birds, no wind, no sound at all, just the dry, humming quiet of a place forgotten by time. But on a Monday night in July, Coldwater called him back. The dispatcher's voice cracked through the static. Unit 14, we've got a possible 1050, abandoned structure, Coldwater. Caller claims to have seen lights. He frowned. Repeat that, dispatch? Coldwater's been empty for decades. Affirmative, but the caller was specific. Said there's a house with lights on and someone in the window. He hesitated. It was 1:38 a.m. No reason anyone should be out there. No residents, no power grid, no tourists this deep in the desert. Still, duty was duty. He switched on his dash cam, took a sip of stale coffee, and headed east. The desert at night was a different world. Endless black horizons, stars like pinholes, and the faint shimmer of heat still rising off cracked asphalt. It took nearly an hour before the first wooden sign appeared. Coldwater, EST 1902. The paint was flaking, half the letters gone. He turned down the dirt path, headlights cutting through dust clouds. The old main street appeared, buildings long collapsed, storefronts skeletal, roofs caved in. And at the end of the road, against the horizon, stood one house still intact. 2 stories, faded green siding. Front porch tilted like it was bowing under its own weight. And through one cracked window, a light. He slowed the cruiser, switched off the engine, and listened. The desert hummed around him. Then faintly he heard it, a rhythmic creak. Like footsteps on old wood. "Sheriff's Department," he called out, stepping from the car. "If anyone's inside, call out." Silence. He moved forward, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The porch groaned under his boots. Dust motes swirled through his light. The door stood slightly open, shifting with the wind. He pushed it open slowly, gun drawn. The smell of rot and dust hit him immediately. The living room looked frozen in time. Couch half collapsed, wallpaper peeling, an old TV set sitting like a relic from another world. And in the corner, a lamp flickered, weak and yellow. It shouldn't have been possible. There was no power line to Coldwater. He knelt by the outlet. It wasn't even connected to wiring. The lamp cord ended in nothing, frayed and dusty, but the bulb still glowed faintly. Then he noticed the photographs on the mantel. A family of 4, mother, father, 2 children, all smiling, but their eyes were black smudges, as if the photo had burned just around their faces. He heard it again and creaking upstairs. He raised his flashlight toward the staircase. "Sheriff's Department, show yourself!" The creaking stopped. He climbed slowly, each step moaning under his weight. Halfway up, he saw something that made his blood freeze. Footprints in the dust. Small, bare, leading from one room to another. Fresh. He followed them to the end of the hall where a door stood slightly ajar. The brass doorknob was warm to the touch. He took a breath and pushed it open. The flashlight beam revealed an old bedroom, a child's maybe. Wallpaper faded with cartoon shapes, a crib toppled in the corner. And on the floor in the middle of the room sat a music box. It was open and spinning. But no sound came from it, just the motion of the ballerina turning slowly in silence. Then the bulb in his flashlight flickered. He backed away, heart pounding. Behind him, a floorboard creaked. He turned sharply wide and froze. At the far end of the hall stood a woman in a long white nightgown, her hair matted, face hidden. Her hands hung limp at her sides, and where her feet touched the floor, the dust began to swirl, like wind moving only around her. "Ma'am, stay where you are," he said, voice shaking. She didn't move, but something else did. Behind her, through the broken doorway, the shadows shifted. Shapes, outlines, things that weren't human moving in slow, deliberate rhythm. He stepped back toward the stairs, and the woman lifted her head. Her eyes were black pits, her mouth wide open but perfectly silent. The air vibrated. His radio hissed violently. "Unit 14, do you copy? We're getting interference." He bolted down the stairs, stumbling over the bottom step. The lamp in the living room had gone out. He burst outside into the desert air, gasping. The house behind him looked completely dark now, like it had never been lit at all. He ran to his cruiser and slammed the door shut, fumbling for the ignition. The engine coughed once, twice, and then died. The radio flickered back on. "Unit 14, what's your location?" He grabbed the mic. "Dispatch, this is Mercer. I'm at Coldwater. Repeat, Coldwater. There's someone inside the last house, possibly multiple subjects." The radio cut out. Then faintly a voice whispered back through the static. "You shouldn't have come." The headlights flickered on by themselves. In the beam, the woman stood in front of the cruiser no more than 10 feet away. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Her head tilted, and for a moment her face was illuminated, and he saw that her skin was burned, blistered, half melted to bone. Then the backseat light came on. He turned and saw 2 children sitting there, silent, smiling. He screamed, threw open the door, and ran. At dawn, a rescue unit found his cruiser at the edge of town, still idling. The headlights were off. The dashcam showed only static, except for a few seconds of footage at the end. At 3:17 a.m., the camera caught the reflection of a woman's face in the driver's side mirror. She was sitting in the back seat, smiling faintly. When the rescuers entered Coldwater later that morning, the house was gone. Only the cracked foundation remained, and 4 sets of footprints leading into the sand. None leading out. To this day, officers passing through that stretch of desert say their radios crackle at the same point, a faint voice whispering through the static. Coldwater's waiting. And if you drive down that road at night, you might see a faint yellow light glowing from where the last house once stood. But don't stop, because if you do, you might not leave Coldwater again. The first call came just before midnight. A weak signal, static, then a voice. "This is Deputy Alvarez requesting backup. Multiple casualties in Redwood Junction. Please respond." The dispatcher, Marla Dixon, frowned at her console. Redwood Junction hadn't appeared in active jurisdiction for over 50 years. It was a ghost town, condemned, evacuated, and erased after the dam collapse of 1973. The valley had been flooded to create Lake Redwood. She thought it was a prank. "Repeat that, caller? You said Redwood Junction?" The line crackled violently, a scream, then silence. Marla checked the logs. No active unit matched that name. Still, the protocol demanded she trace the signal. The coordinates blinked on her screen. Latitude 37.672, longitude 1189049. The exact location of Lake Redwood Center. She hesitated, then radioed out. "Dispatch to Unit 12, got an unidentified transmission. Possible distress call near Lake Redwood. Proceed with caution." Officers Reed and Harlow answered, tired but curious. "Copy that, dispatch. You sure it's not just radio bleed?" "Unclear. Caller claimed to be law enforcement, sending coordinates." The officers rolled out, cruiser headlights slicing through fog and pine shadow as they made their way into the forest road. Neither of them knew Redwood Junction had ever existed. The drive took nearly an hour, winding through cracked mountain roads and dense fir trees. Then suddenly the forest opened into a wide basin. A dry lakebed stretched before them, cracked mud, weeds, remnants of an old dock jutting out into nothing. In the center stood a town. Harlow blinked. What the hell? Rows of buildings perfectly intact. A diner, a post office, the old sheriff's office, all sitting in the empty basin, illuminated faintly by the cruiser's headlights. "This isn't possible," Reed muttered. "This whole place should be underwater." They stepped out of the car, gravel crunching underfoot. The air smelled of rain and rot. In the distance, a faint siren echoed, the kind used by 1960s patrol cars. The radio hissed to life. "Dispatch, we're at Redwood Junction, visual on structures." Marla's voice came back immediately. "Negative. You're inside the lake, Reed. That's impossible. Satellite shows nothing but water." Reed frowned. "We're looking right at it." The radio cracked with static again. Then faintly another voice joined in. The same man from before. "Unit 12, you made it. We need backup at the station. Please hurry." Reed and Harlow froze. The voice wasn't on their frequency anymore. It was coming through the cruiser's loudspeaker. They looked back at the car and the headlights flickered. Inside, the radio dials spun on their own. The air filled with distant chatter. Dozens of overlapping police transmissions, all from different decades. "Officer down." "We're surrounded." "They're not human." Harlow slammed the door shut. "Let's go, now." But Reed couldn't look away from the town. A flickering neon sign caught his eye. Junction Diner, open late. And in the window, silhouettes moved, people sitting at tables talking, gesturing. But there was no sound. He walked closer, flashlight trembling in his hand. The figures didn't react. Their skin was gray, waxy, their faces unmoving. Then one of them turned its head. Its mouth opened, and from it came the exact same voice from the radio. "Back up at the station, please hurry." Reed stumbled backward, shouting for Harlow, but the other officer was gone. Only the cruiser remained, lights still flashing. He ran toward it, calling out, but when he opened the driver's door, there was no one inside. The keys were gone, the engine still running. Then he saw the tracks, Harlow's footprints, leading away from the car, straight toward the sheriff's office at the center of town. Reed followed, heart hammering. The building stood in eerie silence. Its sign read Redwood County Sheriff, Deputy Alvarez. The door creaked open with a gentle push. Inside, dust hung thick in the air, and a faint radio transmission played on a desk. "All units, multiple fatalities, send help." Reed stepped closer. The microphone on the desk was moving, pressing and releasing, but no one was touching it. Then, from the back office, a door slammed shut. "Hello?" he called. "Deputy Alvarez?" No response. He pushed the door open, revealing a dim office with filing cabinets, a gun rack, and a desk covered in old, yellowed papers. And sitting in the chair, slumped forward, was a skeleton still wearing a faded deputy's badge. Reed stepped closer, reading the tag, Alvarez. The skull's jaw hung open as if caught mid-scream, and next to it sat a cassette recorder still spinning. He pressed rewind. The tape screeched softly, then played. "They came out of the water. Whole town, gone dark. They're in the walls. God help us." The tape ended with a splash and a gurgling scream. Then, from the radio on the desk, Alvarez's voice echoed again. "Back up at the station, please hurry." The lights flickered. Reed turned toward the window. The town outside was gone. Only endless dark water lapped against the walls of the station. The cruiser floated halfway submerged near the door, and from beneath the water, faces began to rise, pale, expressionless, eyes open. hundreds of them, drifting upward like drowned mannequins. Reed stumbled back, tripping over the chair. He reached for the radio. "Dispatch, it's real, Redwood's real, it's under the..." The signal cut. Water burst through the windows, flooding the office. The last thing he saw before everything went black was Deputy Alvarez's skeleton turning its head, slowly, toward him. At sunrise, a search team arrived. They found the patrol cruiser parked on the shoreline. Engine off, doors locked, no sign of either officer. But when the tech team reviewed the body cam footage, they found something strange. At 12:03 a.m., the feed went black. Then, for 12 seconds, a new image appeared. The interior of an old sheriff's office underwater. Furniture floating, papers drifting past the camera. In the reflection of the glass, a hand pressed against the lens, and a faint voice whispered, "Back up at the station, please hurry." The timestamp read 1973. The Redwood Dam records show that the valley was flooded on June 12, 1973. The same night Deputy Alvarez's final distress call was logged. Every officer on duty that night drowned before help could reach them. And yet their call keeps coming through. Every few years, somewhere between 11:55 p.m. and 12:15 a.m., dispatchers across the county report the same transmission. "This is Deputy Alvarez. Multiple casualties in Redwood Junction. Please respond." Those who try to answer never come back. So now, when that frequency flares up, they let it play out in silence. Until the voice fades into static and the water grows still again. No one really knew where Sandridge began or where it ended. It sat in the middle of the desert between Arizona and New Mexico, a forgotten mining settlement surrounded by dunes that moved like tides. Maps showed it once decades ago, but even those have faded. Now only truckers whisper about it on late-night radio. A town that appears when the wind is right and disappears when it's done with you. Deputy Aaron Keller didn't believe in ghost stories. He worked Highway 19 patrol, endless miles of desert road, radio static, and the occasional stranded motorist. Until one night when the wind changed. It was a Tuesday, mid-June, the kind of heat that melts everything silent. Aaron had just finished his shift in Dry Creek and was heading back to base when his radio crackled. "Dispatch to Unit 27, possible distress flare 4 miles south of mile marker 98. He frowned. "That's nothing but dunes out there. You sure it's not lightning?" "Negative. Visual confirmation from a passing trucker. Bright red flare moving east." He sighed, turned off the highway, and followed the dirt path. The desert night swallowed everything. His headlights barely cut through the haze of sand. Then, ahead in the distance, he saw it. A faint red glow, drifting low to the ground like a signal fire. He slowed the cruiser, the wind howling louder, grains of sand hitting the windshield like rain. And then he saw it. Buildings. A full town stretched across the horizon. Wooden storefronts, lampposts flickering, even a church steeple rising crookedly against the night sky. It looked old, a century at least, but somehow untouched by time. Aaron rubbed his eyes. There was no way this could be real. He parked at the edge of what looked like Main Street, stepped out, and immediately felt the air change. Colder, thinner. The wind no longer blew randomly. It whistled in patterns, almost like speech. "Hello," he called out. "Is anyone here?" His voice echoed across empty buildings. Then faintly, from somewhere ahead, a door creaked open. He followed the sound, hand resting on his holster. The sign above the door read Sandridge General Store. Inside, shelves stood lined with cans and supplies, everything coated in dust. A lantern hung from the ceiling, flickering weakly. It shouldn't have been burning. It looked like oil from another century. Aaron called again. "Sheriff's Department, anyone injured?" No response. But something about the floor caught his attention. Footprints. Fresh ones. They led toward the back room, where a single radio sat on a table, a vintage model from the 1940s. It was still powered on. A faint voice whispered through the static. "Wind's rising. They're coming back." He leaned closer. "This is Deputy Keller. Who's transmitting?" No answer. Just the soft hiss of desert air through broken speakers. He turned to leave and stopped dead. Through the window he could see people now. Figures walking slowly down the street, their outlines barely visible through the blowing sand. They moved stiffly, like marionettes caught in the wind. He ran outside. "Hey, stop, police!" But the wind howled suddenly, louder, sharper, and the figures vanished. The air was filled with whispers now, hundreds of overlapping voices. He turned in circles, flashlight jerking through the storm, dust biting at his face. The wind carried words. At first he thought it was his imagination, but then he heard it clearly. "You shouldn't have come, Deputy." His blood froze. He bolted back toward his cruiser, but it was gone. Nothing but desert stretched behind him, the tracks already buried. He was standing in the middle of the town square now. Every window of every building was glowing faintly, as if lit from within. And through the shifting sand, he could see shadows moving. Dozens of them, men, women, children. Their faces blurred, their clothes tattered, all walking aimlessly, whispering in the same hollow rhythm. The wind carried their voices through the air like echoes of memory. "We stayed when the mine collapsed. We couldn't leave the wind. It speaks now." Aaron's radio crackled to life. "Unit 27, come in. We're losing your signal. What's your location?" He grabbed it. "Dispatch, I'm in a town called Sandridge. You got that? There are people here." "Negative. There's nothing at your coordinates, just dunes. Are you sure you're not—" The line went dead. A faint rumble echoed from below, like thunder deep in the earth. The ground shifted slightly under his boots. He looked toward the horizon. The old mine entrance was visible, half buried in sand. Something inside was glowing. He moved closer, the wind roaring around him. The mine shaft was lined with collapsed timbers, but from its depths came the unmistakable hum of machinery. And voices, men shouting, picks striking rock. It sounded alive, like the mine was still running. He shined his flashlight inside and saw dozens of miners, their skin gray with dust, their eyes sunken black, swinging picks into invisible walls. Each time the light hit them, they froze, then turned slowly toward him. Aaron stumbled back, choking on sand. He turned to run, but the wind pushed against him, not randomly now, but purposefully. It moved like hands. Through the storm, he heard something that made his blood go cold. His own voice carried through the air. "This is Deputy Keller. Possible distress flare, mile marker 98, proceeding on foot." He stopped. That was what he'd said an hour ago. The wind howled again, repeating his voice over and over until it wasn't just wind anymore. It was screaming. He ran blind through the storm until he hit something hard. A wall. The general store again. Except this time it was new. No dust, no rot. The lantern inside burning bright. Through the glass he saw people moving, laughing, alive. And one of them, behind the counter, looked exactly like him. He stumbled backward, horrified. The version of himself inside turned toward the window and stared, expressionless. Then slowly it smiled. The wind rose again, howling through the buildings, tearing at the signs, the sand swirling upward like smoke. The world around him dissolved into motion. The town itself began to fade, the outlines of the buildings turning to dust. He screamed into the radio. "Dispatch, I can see myself. There's another me." Static swallowed everything. At dawn, a search team found his cruiser half buried near mile marker 98. The engine was still running. His radio was locked in an active transmission loop, repeating the same words over and over. "This is Deputy Keller. I'm proceeding on foot." No sign of Keller was ever found, but in the years since, Truckers still report strange whispers on their CB radios when crossing that stretch of highway during sandstorms. The wind picks up suddenly, carrying fragments of conversation that sound like an old dispatch channel. You shouldn't have come. We stayed when the mine collapsed. It speaks now. And if you listen closely, somewhere deep in the static you can hear one more voice. A man calling for help. His words fading with the wind. This is Deputy Keller requesting backup in Sandridge. Then, nothing. Only the wind whispering. There's a stretch of highway that cuts through the Mojave called Route 191. It's long, flat, and empty, just dust, cactus, and heat. Truckers call it the Dead Mile because nothing grows there anymore, not even tumbleweed. That's where Officer Luke Harper first saw it. The Sandline Motel. It wasn't supposed to exist. It wasn't on any registry, any map, or county record. But every few months someone reported seeing lights in its windows. Or worse, people inside waving for help. It started with a 911 call just after midnight. The dispatcher logged it as static at first, but after a few seconds a faint voice broke through. "Please, I come quick, there's been an accident." The signal came from the desert, nowhere near any phone towers. The GPS pin dropped near the old service road connecting to Route 191. Luke took the call himself. He'd been a patrol officer for 12 years and had heard every kind of strange emergency imaginable. Hoaxes, lost hikers, ghost hunters. But the voice on that call didn't sound like a prank. It sounded terrified. "Who's hurt?" he asked. "All of us," the voice said, then silence. He reached the turnoff around 1:14 a.m. No other cars, just a sign half buried in sand reading Sandline Motel, vacancy. The arrow flickered faintly in red. Luke frowned. There shouldn't have been power out there. The nearest grid ended 30 miles back. He turned down the dirt road. The cruiser's headlights cut across a wide clearing. And there it was. A row of 10 motel rooms, their doors perfectly aligned under a faded neon canopy. The sign buzzed weakly, throwing blood-colored light over cracked pavement. In the center, an office with a single glass door. The window blinds twitched. Someone had just moved them. He parked, got out, and felt the dry wind rush against his face. Every sound carried, the hum of insects, the creak of the sign, the soft ring of the bell hanging above the office door. He pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of cigarettes and dust. A counter, a wall of keys, a register that looked like it hadn't been touched since the 1970s. Then he heard movement, footsteps in the hallway behind the counter. "Police!" he called out. "Anyone here?" A figure stepped out slowly. A woman in her 60s, gray hair tied back, wearing a motel clerk's uniform. Her expression was blank. "You're late," she said. Luke blinked. "Ma'am, did you call 911? The woman tilted her head slightly. "They're in room 7, been waiting all night." He frowned. "Who's in room 7? She didn't answer. She just reached behind the counter, pulled out a key and placed it in his hand. It was warm. Before he could speak again, the phone on the desk rang. A shrill old rotary tone. The woman picked it up, nodded, and whispered, "Yes, me's here." Then she handed the receiver to Luke. Static at first, then a faint voice. "Officer Harper, you took too long." He dropped the phone and ran outside. The night felt heavier now, the air thicker. The rooms all looked identical, their numbers painted in faded white on each door. He found room 7. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, the lights were already on. The room looked ordinary. A bed, a dresser, floral curtains. Except the bed was wet. He touched the sheet, damp and cold, like it had just been soaked in rain. Then he noticed the smell. Salt water. He turned toward the bathroom. The door was closed, steam leaking from underneath. "Hello?" The faucet was running. He pushed the door open, and the entire room was flooded ankle deep. Water poured from the sink, overflowing endlessly, but the mirror above it was completely dry. He reached for the faucet handle and saw movement in the reflection, a figure standing directly behind him. He spun around. Nothing there. The bathroom was empty, but the reflection still showed someone. A man in a police uniform, soaked to the bone, eyes black and hollow. Luke froze. The figure in the mirror smiled. Then the reflection reached forward, and its hand pressed against the glass from the inside. The mirror cracked. He stumbled back into the bedroom. The water from the bathroom followed him, crawling across the carpet like a living thing. The TV flickered on, static first, then a grainy black and white feed. The motel's exterior. From above. On the screen he could see himself, standing in room 7's doorway. And then one by one the other room doors opened. Figures stepped out, pale, dripping wet, faces half rotted, each one wearing old motel uniforms or travel clothes from different decades. They all turned toward his room. He ran to the window, but outside the neon sign had changed. It no longer said vacancy. Now it said, checked in. He grabbed his radio. Dispatch, this is Officer Harper. I need immediate backup on Route 191, Sandline Motel. Repeat, Sandline Motel. The reply came through almost instantly, but the voice wasn't his dispatcher. It was his own voice. Copy that, Harper. You're already checked in. He dropped the radio. The doorknob rattled. Then came knocking. Slow, deliberate. 10 knocks, one for every room. He backed away, gun trembling in his hand. The knocking stopped. Then the phone on the nightstand rang. He didn't answer it. It rang once more, then stopped. The TV flickered again. This time, the camera feed was from inside the room. The lens pointed straight at him. The last thing the dash cam recorded was static, followed by the faint ring of the motel bell. When search units arrived the next morning, there was nothing there. Just flat desert and a half-buried signpost, Sandline Motel. Vacancy. No building, no clerk, no Officer Harper. But his cruiser was found a mile down the highway. Engine off, doors locked, radio still active. The transmission log showed one message repeating endlessly. They're in room 7, been waiting all night. A month later, a trucker passing through that same stretch at 3 a.m. reported seeing a fully lit motel in the distance. He stopped to look, but when he turned his lights on, it vanished. He swore he saw someone at the front desk. A police officer, soaked in rain, staring at him through the window. The next morning, the sign reappeared, half buried in sand again. Only one word was still readable beneath the dust. Checked in. They say if you're driving through Route 191 at night and see a faint neon light far off in the dark, don't stop. Because the Sandline Motel doesn't want guests. It wants replacements. And once you walk through the door, you'll never check out. Would you like me to now create the ideal thumbnail image prompt for this story? Featuring the eerie neon motel at night, glowing red through fog, with the empty police cruiser outside. Dry Creek used to be a mining town, a place that once glittered with gold dust and hope. Now it's nothing but dirt, wind, and silence. It sits off Route 78, deep in northern Nevada. A handful of rusted buildings half swallowed by the desert. No one lives there anymore. Or at least that's what everyone says. Because if you drive past Dry Creek after midnight, you'll sometimes see the lights. They float above the old mine entrance, flickering like lanterns, swaying side to side. Sometimes there's one, sometimes 3, and sometimes they move toward you. Deputy Claire Monroe was new to the county when she first heard about them. She was the kind of cop who didn't scare easy, ex-military, level-headed, sharp. When locals told her about glowing orbs and ghost miners, she laughed it off. Then came the call. A pickup truck found abandoned near Dry Creek Road. Driver missing. Doors locked from the inside. Headlights still on. The last GPS ping from his phone showed his location near the old Holloway mine, just past the Dry Creek sign. Claire volunteered to check it out. It was 12:47 a.m. when she arrived. The desert was quiet. No wind, no animals, just the low hum of her engine cooling. She parked near the old general store and stepped out. Her flashlight beam swept across the dirt. Footprints. Bare feet. Too many to count. She followed them past the saloon ruins and down a narrow slope toward the mine. The entrance yawned open like a mouth framed by collapsed wooden beams and a keep out sign half buried in sand. Then she saw it. A light. Not a flashlight. Not a flame. Just a floating white glow about 20 feet ahead, hanging motionless in the air. Her heart pounded. She raised her weapon. "Sheriff's Department, identify yourself." The light pulsed once. Then another appeared beside it. And another. 3 orbs now, drifting gently back and forth like they were caught in a slow current. Claire stepped closer, her boots crunching on gravel. The air grew colder with each step. Her breath fogged. She was still 50 yards away when her radio crackled. "Monroe, status check. You near the mine yet?" She lifted the mic. "Affirmative, I've got something. Looks like lights in the air." "Lights?" Could be someone with drones, but they're... The signal cut out. She tapped the mic again. "Dispatch, come in." Nothing. She turned back toward her cruiser and froze. The town was gone. Where her vehicle and the road had been, there was now nothing but desert. Flat, endless desert under a moonless sky. Her throat tightened. What the hell? The lights ahead started moving, faster now, circling her in wide arcs. Her flashlight flickered, then died completely. She drew her sidearm, trying to stay calm, but the lights began to hum. A low, vibrating sound that seemed to come from inside her skull. She stumbled back and her heel struck something solid. A helmet half buried in sand. Old, rusted. A miner's helmet. When she lifted it, dust poured out. And something else rolled free. "A bone!" Then came the voices. Soft at first, like whispers carried by the wind. "Help us. It's still burning. We never made it out." The ground trembled. A faint rumble like thunder underground. Claire aimed her light toward the mine entrance. There, movement. Dozens of figures walking slowly out of the darkness, their bodies gray and cracked like dried clay. Their eyes glowed the same pale white as the orbs. She stumbled back, heart hammering. "Stay back, don't move!" But they didn't stop. They kept walking, silent now, dragging tools, helmets, lanterns. Ghosts of the miners who died when the shaft collapsed in 1912. And behind them, in the darkness of the tunnel, something larger moved. She turned and ran up the hill, slipping on loose gravel. The air felt heavy now, like trying to breathe through water. When she reached the top, the lights were everywhere. Not 3, not 5, but dozens, hovering in the air like fireflies made of glass. They followed her, forming a long, winding line through the dark, drifting toward the town ruins. The lights passed through the buildings, through walls, through glass, flickering like memories playing on a loop. And that's when she saw him. A man standing beside the old gas pump. Dusty uniform, badge still pinned to his chest. A sheriff from another time. He lifted his head slowly. His face was pale, eyes black. "You shouldn't be here." Claire raised her gun. "Who are you?" He smiled, still working the night shift. Then the light surged, dozens of them, bursting around her in a wave of blinding white. When the light faded, the town was gone again. She was standing on open desert, her cruiser nowhere in sight, just the mine entrance glowing faintly in the distance, like an open wound. She stumbled toward it, dizzy, disoriented until her radio crackled back to life. "Monroe, do you copy? Where the hell are you?" She pressed the mic, shaking. I don't know. The town. It's gone. There were lights." "What town? You're not on the map anymore. GPS shows you 5 miles off Route 78. What's your 20? She looked around, nothing but darkness. "Dispatch," she whispered. "I think I'm still in Dry Creek." By sunrise, search teams found her cruiser exactly where she'd parked it. The engine was off, keys still in the ignition, radio tuned to static. Her footprints led a few hundred feet into the desert, then stopped. No trace of Claire Monroe was ever found. But months later, a new deputy patrolling Route 78 reported seeing strange lights in the distance near the Dry Creek sign. He pulled over to watch. At first, he thought they were car headlights. Then one of the lights moved closer, floating silently through the air until it hovered right in front of his windshield. Inside it, he could see a face, pale, expressionless, a woman's face, and her badge number was still visible on her uniform. Now, the locals say Dry Creek still glows on certain nights, especially when the wind is low and the air is dry. The lights rise from the mine, drift across the ruins, and fade into the desert. Some think they're ghosts. Others think they're echoes, energy replaying its final moments again and again. But if you ever stop to watch them, even for a second, you might see one light break away from the rest and start moving toward you. When that happens, don't look into it, because sometimes if you do, you'll see something staring back. And if you blink, you'll never see the road again. If you made it this far, thank you for spending your night with us. If these stories gave you chills, there's plenty more waiting. Don't forget to subscribe to Night Fear Stories for new terrifying tales every single night. Sleep well, if you can.